Hello and welcome to Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn here on RVN TV. I'm your host, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and our show is about inspiration and hope and stories of overcoming adversity. With me today, we have a very special guest. He is Captain Joe Sacchetti. He is an Army Ranger, a paratrooper, and an author. Welcome to the program.
Thank you to have me. Thank you for having me today,
Yes.
Dr. Jacalyn. Glad to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you, and you're so accomplished. And I've never met anyone who's an Army Ranger or a paratrooper. That's just incredible. Would you share with our viewers what exactly an Army Ranger is?
Sure. You know, it's funny because the audience at large, it really has a great mind share for elite military, and people love to see movies and everything that has to do with the military. An Army Ranger is the Army version of elite forces, and there's several that people know about, Navy SEALs, and there's also Green Berets and Marine Special Operations. An Army Ranger has the mission of being on land and conducting these classic warfare missions like raids and ambushes and so forth. And what makes an Army Ranger special is that they usually draw the hardest missions, and they're small units as compared to the million men that might be in the Army. You just have a couple of battalions of Rangers, which is to say a few thousand, and the training is super tough. And when most people think of Army Rangers, you have this mystical image that comes over your head. You can literally close your eyes and see helicopters coming over the mountain in a low hum, and then Army Rangers roping down from the choppers or dropping from the sky in a parachute, or maybe crawling out of the high grass, fully armed, rigorously trained, and prepared to defeat the enemy.
You know, in my mind, I can see all of that, and from different movies, and they're the kind of movies I love to watch. So there is a fascination with Army Rangers and SEALs and all the elite military. When did you know that this is something you wanted to do?
Well, I was in ROTC at college. I went to LaSalle nearby, and I had the opportunity to get a scholarship to attend school and then become an officer. And then as I got in further into the Army, I realized that I wanted to try to do the hardest thing I could possibly do. And then that wound up evolving into, let me try to do the hardest thing that any human can do, which is graduate Army Ranger School. And it really is considered the #1 leadership school in the world. It's interesting because it's 60 days of starvation and an hour of sleep per night, and you tend to lose 30 or 40 pounds there. And when you get down to the worst that you can possibly be with hunger and lack of sleep, that's when you're tested for leading men. And leadership in the Ranger School method is not just classroom untested type leadership. It's battlefield, and it's having the lives of men dependent on what you do. So I just decided that let me try to do something that's the hardest thing I can possibly do, and then in doing so, meet some of the greatest humans that I've ever met.
Wow, that's amazing. Congratulations on all you've accomplished. And you're wearing such a handsome jacket here, and you've got some things on here. Can you share with us what they mean?
Yes, you asked me that before, which is great. This is the pin of the 82nd Airborne. That's the paratrooper division of soldiers. That's the only airborne division in the world. That's folks that jump out of airplanes. And then, and these, of course, are some medals and ribbons and so forth that Army people proudly wear when they're out. And of course, this little thing, which I think is hard to see. That's the Ranger tab. And this little piece of metal that probably costs $1 to manufacture takes a lifetime of effort to not only to earn, but then to live every day. Because even after the 60 days of training, then you're authorized to wear a Ranger tab. And that's just really the start, because you're living that Ranger leadership every day, everywhere you go throughout the rest of the Army and the rest of life. If you have that associated with you, you better live up to it.
That sounds like a lot of responsibility, but you carry it well. So I'm wondering, Captain, in order to just get into Army Ranger training, you must have to have certain qualifications. What would they be?
Well, the Army looks for the most physically fit and psychologically competent troops they can find to send to Ranger School. And of course, you have to volunteer. In fact, not only do you have to volunteer in today's Army, you have to volunteer to be in the Army. So no one's ever conscripted to be in the Ranger. No one ever says that I'm a Ranger, I didn't mean to be. You have to volunteer for the Army, and then you have to volunteer to jump out of planes and be a paratrooper. And then you have to volunteer to go to Ranger School. And so it's folks that want to do it. But the Army absolutely looks for the folks that are most physically fit and are going to be able to endure. And even then, a Ranger School class will typically start with 400 or 500 candidates and whittle themselves down to 100 by the time they graduate. Half of them are gone after the first week because they have they get blitzed in you know, the first week of Ranger School with PT tests and land navigation and running and jumping and yelling and everything you can imagine. And even folks that have come prepared for the mental strain, they buckle. And Ranger School is unforgiving. The Ranger instructors there, if you don't pass, you're out. There's many ways to fail. If you get injured, you're out. If you get a bad patrol or a bad grade, you're out. If you fail a test, you're out. And then also, if you are peer reviewed, if the rest of the folks in the squad don't think you're up to the task, you're out. So only the best are staying in.
I feel honored to be sitting here next to you, so thank you for your service. Obviously, that's really important. I'm just wondering, when you think back to those 60 days and you saw people who were broken and who had to leave, what was it that kept you mentally strong to finish it out?
Well, there's a couple things, I think, that get everybody through. One of which is a vision of what it's going to be like at the end. And at the time, I knew that I wanted to graduate all of my training and command a unit. And I had this vision that I wanted to command one of the top, most elite units in the world, which is an infantry unit in the 82nd Airborne. And the only way to do that is be Ranger qualified. That's mandatory. And so I had this vision of where I wanted to be, and even with all the stress and pressure that you're coming under at Ranger School, you have a vision. And you know it goes beyond that one day. And then that's funny because the second part is compartmentalizing the agony and not thinking about you're starving on day 3 of a mission and you have 8 more to go. How am I going to do this? It doesn't pay to think too far ahead. We call it looking at the horizon. We're looking at the horizon, but all we have to do is make the next step. And I do remember the second phase of Ranger School is the mountain phase. It's broken down into 3 or 4 phases. There's a swamp phase and a city phase, and it used to be a desert phase. But during the mountain phase, that's when it really got me. And I was hurting, and I had gotten a little bit sick. But you can't let anyone know you're sick. If you're sick, you go to the infirmary, and then you're out. So you have to hide that. And if you're injured, you have to hide that too. Because if you're injured, if you've hurt your leg or something like that, you can't continue, you're out. So I was sick, and I'd hurt my leg. But I wasn't going to let anyone know. And the one day in the mountain phase was the day we had to climb up a mountain. And by the luck of the draw, I picked having to carry the machine gun, the M60 machine gun, which weighs about 25 pounds, and 1,000 rounds of ammo, which is another 30 pounds. And that was almost the straw that broke the camel's back. I was exhausted, hungry, deprived of sleep, injured and sick. And I thought to myself, this is the day that's going to test me. And I literally got to the point where I thought, I'm just going to try to get to the top of that mountain. And if I have to quit, then I'll quit then. But not until then. And then that even got too hard. It got to be, I'm just going to make it to that next rock that's halfway up the mountain. I'm just going to make it to that point. And if I have to quit after that, I'll quit. And even that got too hard. And I literally got to where I'm just going to make one more step forward. And if I make that step forward, I'll consider whether I'll quit or not. And I made the next step, and I made it to the rock. I made it to the top of the mountain, finished that patrol, and I didn't wind up quitting that day. I even remember on the way back, so exhausted as a human being, even when the mission was over and we were all heading back to camp, I just dropped to the ground mid-stride and just fell on the ground, collapsed, and struggling to get up. And the ranger behind me didn't break his stride. He reached a big hand down and grabbed me, pulled me back up, and we just kept walking. And I thought that's the way to overcome. You have to have the mental strength. Then you know the rest of the guys around you are going to back you up.
So it sounds like what you're saying, and there are a lot of life lessons in what you just shared, is that instead of being overwhelmed by the entire magnitude of a situation, you focus on compartmentalizing things. And so maybe you're like you said, going up to the mountain, you're just going to take one step. And I think a lot of us get derailed because we become so overwhelmed. We look at the whole picture and we think, how are we ever going to get to where we need to go?
You're right. And it's a wonderful example in the rest of life. The reason why the Rangers want to teach you that mission is because even in Ranger School, which they try to make actually more difficult in some ways than combat, we can be put in bad positions where there's no help coming, we're running low on food and ammunition, and we've got to hold out until morning. And it's not like the movies where you jump ahead to the last scene. And when things look as bad as they can, and someone says over the radio, help will be here in 24 hours. In the movies, a commercial comes, and then you vault ahead to that next 24 hours. But for Rangers, you're living every minute of that. And it's almost impossible to think that far ahead. You've got to just live for that moment, conquer that minute, win that 10 minutes, win the hour, win the 6 hours, and then maybe you'll live to the 24-hour point where help will come and get you.
And how does that translate into business life or into a career? Like for the people who are watching or thinking, well, I'm running a company and I have to look at the whole picture, or how can you take what you've experienced and parlay it into business? Well,
that's a great question. I know we're going to talk about our book that's coming up, Guts, Smarts, and Love, and that's a book that talks about Army Rangers and their stories and the business principles that they embody. And it's a really cool way. I thought that the time is really right to seek out the best leadership school in the world and learn from them. If we want to learn about medicine, we probably go to Johns Hopkins. If we want to learn about baseball, we turn on ESPN. And so it makes sense to look at the Army's premier leadership school and figure out what makes these guys so successful. And what better way to illustrate it in little stories. So you see that the book will have chapters, and each chapter talks about a leadership principle that is key in business today, like creating a persona, or protecting and delivering, or walking the walk. Each of them may have cool titles, and it's a short story that talks about Sergeant so-and-so. And in the book, you'll come to respect all of these Rangers. You'll laugh with some and probably cry with some others.
So they're true stories.
They are absolutely true. We lived every day of them. And the book is certainly not about me, but I'm the thread of continuity because I served with all these great Rangers. And it's really their stories and their little tidbits of what made them amazing, like being authentic. And everything that winds up being a great leadership principle in the military, we find translates into business and can make young people in business successful too.
Well, I do know from having worked with a number of recruiters over the years that they really look for people in the military because of the discipline and the structure that you guys have, that you make really good employees and leaders.
You're right.
Yeah.
I myself look for them. I know when I came out of the Army in the mid-90s, that was just starting to be in vogue. And I'm glad to see it because military folks are self-starters. And they're disciplined, and in today's world where we're not necessarily going into an office, it's nice to know that folks are going to get up in the morning, make their bed, and then get right to work.
Very well said. Well, Captain Joe Sacchetti, we have to take a break, and we are going to hear from our sponsors. Stay with us. We will be right back on Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn.
Nights of excitement. And a trail of memories. Now that's New Jersey.
plus this equals this, plus this, and this. Don't drink and drive.
Listen, what will make your event simply beautiful? Is it your attire, your decorations, your entertainment? Well, join me, Alicia Simone, as I chat with some amazing vendors and clientele who will share their stories and images and their experiences. Right here on RVN TV, Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. and Wednesday at 4 p.m. It will be simply beautiful. See you then.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last.
Hello, and welcome back to RVN TV. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. I'm a life coach, and our program is Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn. My guest is Captain Joe Sacchetti. He is an Army Ranger, a paratrooper, and an author. And his book is Guts, Smarts, and Love. Before we took the break, we were talking about your book. When is it coming out?
Thanks. It is coming out on November 11th. Which, as most of us know, that date rings in our memories. That's Veterans Day. So it's a really cool day. It's coming out in ebook on November and in paperback in March.
Okay, and how will people be able to purchase it?
They can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Rakuten, all the great ways, and they should find it in bookstores also.
Excellent. So you were talking about the fact that the book is actually written about Army Rangers and their leadership principles in each of the stories that are in these chapters. How did you come up with the idea to write it that way?
Well, I finally realized after about 3 decades that the events that happened in the Army that I was able to experience and learn from were so impactful for me 3 decades ago. And fast forward to now, they've stayed just as impactful. And I thought, if that is the case for me, and these were life-changing experiences, then they should be shared. And as I mentioned before, what better way or what better place to learn about leadership rather than the greatest leadership school that the world knows today, which is Army Ranger School. And it's 60 days of torment and hunger and starvation and so forth. And these leaders that it produces are tremendous. And just living with them for years, and in peacetime and in wartime and afterwards, made me realize that they embody these wonderful principles of success. And so it was time to extract them. And then how to best put them in a story or tell their piece than just little nuggets of what it was that I learned about them that was so impactful. And so the book will take you through profiles, and you're going to laugh and you're going to cry a little bit of folks that are in combat on missions or just being friends to each other, and there's a lot of brotherhood. You may notice that in the title, Guts, Smarts, and Love, those are 3 principles that really embody true leaders. And somebody had read through the story and said, do you know that the word love appears in your manuscript 70 times? And I didn't realize that. And that's the brotherhood of these people that are experiencing these situations together.
So it's not just the strong mind and the strong body, but it's the compassionate heart.
That's right. I think one particular story that you'll love to read is about one of the sergeants that I served with in the Airborne, Arthur. And after he served, he went on to be even more qualified. He went to Paratrooper school, para rescue school, to save lives. And there's a few states in the United States that have para rescue, and New York is one of them. So he's fairly local in New York. And talk about, other than the rough, tough side, he paid attention, as is the mark of elite soldiers. We don't let any bit of training ever go to waste. And we remember it all in case we ever have to use it. So he did a rotation in Albuquerque Hospital for high-risk pregnancies. Years later, in the snowstorm of 1999, it was 2 a.m. and he was a state trooper in New York City, or in upstate New York, and got a call that there was a pregnant lady in distress. She could not get to the hospital on her own. She needed a state trooper to come and get her there in the big cruiser. And so he was working the shift alone, single. As always, he volunteered to do shifts so that the married troopers could be home with their families. And he arrived at the door, and the family was so relieved to see him. They were going to get to the hospital. And he went into the room where the wife, or your mom-to-be, Leah, was there, and relieved. And he checked, how are your contractions? And they were coming every 2 minutes. And he realized, we're not going to make it to the hospital. We're having this baby here. And so that chapter is called Protecting and Delivering, which I think is a wonderful leadership principle in today's world of servant leadership. So it's that other side, that complete side of leadership.
So many incredible things. I can't wait to read this book. So you said it's coming out in November, the ebook, and then March we can buy the actual paperback
That's
copy.
Right.
Excellent. I know I'm going to be purchasing it. I think we have some pictures that we want to look at today.
Okay, well, there's a picture in uniform. That's nice that you have it there. One thing is, I love that the folks throughout the land have such a great imagery of the military, and I don't think it always was that way. We had maybe a little dip 40, 50 years ago, but I am so glad to see that kids in malls and carnivals and in the airports, they just love to see our military.
Mm-hmm. I agree, and you look very decorated there. You have a lot of, are they called medals, badges?
Yeah, there's medals and badges and ribbons and all kind of stuff. And listen, if you're in the military, folks, or young people that are watching this program, and you do a good job, and you try to learn everything you can, these good things follow. People recognize you. This is a cool picture. Now, these are several guys that appear in the book, actually every one of them. There's probably about 50 or 60 Army Rangers that are in the book. I just had the opportunity to be in North Carolina a couple of weeks ago. And we got together for, I guess you'd call it a mini reunion. Mm-hmm. Remember, people are spread out all across the world, definitely the U.S. Several of the Rangers that are in the book are downrange right now. They're overseas, deployed. And several of them are sort of somewhat near Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So I got together with the guys, and we got around, this is going to sound so kind of homespun, but we sat around a campfire in the middle of the North Carolina mountains, and I read excerpts of each of their passages that none of the others had heard.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So, what are we looking at now?
That's our old, literally it's my old T-shirt from the unit. And Ranger, of course, that's the Ranger tab. And it's great. I think this might be the first time the viewers are seeing what that Ranger tab is. Mm-hmm. That little tab that you wear on your shoulder is what takes so much dedication to do. And then even beyond that, when I went to the 82nd Airborne in an infantry battalion, which is really the top of the top, there's one battalion out of every 27 that are, or every 15 or so, that is a recon platoon. And that has to be all Rangers. And they have the trickiest missions and so forth. So I was lucky enough to command that recon battalion. And that's a T-shirt that we used to wear And you know, the guys don't throw them out. We still wear them.
No, I would imagine you wear them with holes, frayed, it doesn't matter. So, Captain, what I'm wondering is, you know, people who are watching the show, they're going to think, wow, this Army Ranger, he's accomplished so much, he's so strong, he's unlike most of us. And I'm sitting here during COVID, and I lost my business, or, you know, I lost a family member, this happened, that happened. What would you say to them to help them overcome their adversity?
I'm glad you asked that, because every Ranger that I served with came from a community just like ours. In fact, there's probably a soldier or even an elite troop, paratrooper that lived in our town and grew up just to be a normal, you know, through a normal life, but wanted something, wanted to prove to themselves that they could conquer, and in a sense, be superhuman. And so they just started with their very first, you know, their first accomplishment. And even when it looked like it would be too much. And then when they got good at running, then they got good at swimming. And then they got good at running, swimming, and then they were, you know, got good at hiking and maybe shooting. And you just learn one thing after another, and before you know it, you're with other folks that want to be the best also.
That's beautiful. And you know, I have that image of you in the mountains with the machine gun and all the ammo that you had to carry. And if you think about it, that figuratively, literally could be somebody's own baggage that they have to carry, right? Whatever journey their life, the path that they're on, they have all this stuff that's weighing them down. And you talked about the fact that you were going to try to make it here, then you're going to make it here. You're going to make it one step. So that's what people really have to do, right?
Right, I think so. And, you know, not giving up. And, you know, every plan that we have in life that to get to the top is going to hit obstacles. Otherwise, life would be easy. And so what you find out from the Army Rangers is they don't stop when they get the first obstacle. And even Mike Tyson said, you know, the best plan ends when you get punched in the mouth. I mean, we've got to keep going. Life is going to punch us in the mouth, and we're going to hit obstacles, and sometimes there's going to be active enemy out there shooting at us. And that's the time to pull together and be a team and know that you can do it.
I love the fact you just said team. So it's important to have a support group, right? People who are like-minded around you?
I don't think you can do it alone in life. I mean, even when we want to get in shape and during COVID and doing all the things, we need a buddy system. In fact, the Army lives by it. Everyone has a buddy. So when I went to Ranger School, I had a Ranger buddy. And in fact, on the very last day of Ranger School, with absolutely no ceremony involved, our Ranger instructor told us to take a left and go walk onto a muddy field, called us to attention, and pulled out a handful of dirty, scratched up Ranger tab pins and handed them out. And our Ranger buddy we turned to each other, and each Ranger buddy pinned the Ranger tab on the others, and there was, you know, no ceremony to it. But he informed us that we had completed the mission, completed the requirements, and now we're Rangers. Yeah. And the beauty of it was that the person you were closest to, that you relied on, that when you were going to fall and falter, was there to pick you up. That was the person that pinned you.
Oh, that's amazing. There's so many incredible life lessons to learn from what you've experienced, and I can't believe we're coming to the end of our show. What would you like our viewers to take away from reading your book?
Well, folks that want to know a little glimpse of what it takes to be real leaders, and fortunately, minus the gunfire and the starvation that it took to figure out, can read profiles of guts, smarts, and love through the book. And you'll see 50 or 60 Rangers in there that you'll come to know, and as I say, you're going to laugh with some of them and cry with some of them, but you'll respect all of the missions that they read. And I think you can go back and look at the individual lessons and really enjoy them and build it into your own persona.
And how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about being an Army Ranger? We know to get the book, you can go to Amazon or any of the fine booksellers that are out there. But if they want to reach out to you, LinkedIn, is that the best way? Or?
I'm on LinkedIn as Joe Sacchetti, but also www.armyranger@mit.com is my website, and easy to find. And I love talking leadership, love talking mentoring, anything global, travel, business, any way that I can help. I'm happy to do that.
Well, we appreciate that. So it's armyranger.mit. MIT?
It's a little bit of a mouthful.
Okay.
It's because it's got at in it twice. Army Ranger at MIT.com.
Okay. Okay. That's what was in my memory. Army Ranger at MIT.com. Okay. So please pick up Joe's book. It's amazing. Captain, thank you so much for your service, your leadership, and your inspiration. It was a pleasure to have you here today. What's next for you?
Well, I have an active corporate life. I run the channel, channel sales for a software startup in California. That takes up all of my fun time. And of course, you know, I like to mentor and coach kids. I'm involved at Eastern University as an assistant track coach in my spare time.
Oh my gosh, everything you're doing, you're giving back and helping other people. So thank you for being here today, because that's what this program is all about. So for today, that's a wrap on Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, and a big thank you to my guest, Captain Joe Sacchetti, and for all of his service and leadership.
Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn. Happy to be here.
We'll see you next time.